Hi, guys. Welcome to the Church Split. My name is Will, and we have not Brian, but David with us here today.
What's up, heretics?
And you guys know what we do here. We help you escape your church's echo chamber, learn to think biblically, and, of course, challenge the status quo. Well, you don't really do that, but that's what I do.
I feel like I do challenge the status quo.
You definitely do that.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, if you haven't already, smash the like button and subscribe as per the usual, the internet stuff. You guys know what you do. And also text it to a friend. I don't know if you know this, David, but analytics show that texting to a friend is actually the #1 way people share anymore. So
interesting.
Isn't that funny? So yeah, anyway, so go ahead and do that. And guys, for those of you who do not know and did not follow when I was on the Rise and Above podcast, this is my brother David. So we've had my sister on the channel way back in the day, Melinda Wright, and then now we have David here. And you and I have wanted to do this for an embarrassingly long
2 years now.
Yeah, like 2 years. And we're really bad at doing this. So
you're really bad.
Why is it my fault?
Just because it is.
Okay, whatever. I'll fall on that sword today.
I must add that you were on my podcast, so I did try.
Yeah, that's true. So David had me on his podcast this last summer to talk about my story. We had whiskey and cigars during that episode, and it was awesome. Had such a good time. But don't go if you're a Christian who's got a weak stomach on certain issues, because it's a very adult conversation. Because mainly our story is a very adult story. It's like we were children who dealt with adult level things. So you and I are kind of sick and we're kind of twisted. We have a weird sense of humor, and not everyone gets it. So people are like, "Wow, that's a little dark. That's messed up. You guys shouldn't say that." We're like, "Oh, really? That's like Tuesday for us in the 6th grade." Anyway, so David, you are my guest today. Brian is still out of studio, guys. He's got a lot going on right now, so he'll be back when he's back. He's just a busy dude, and it's a lot. So right now, we're just pushing on ahead. But right now, David, real quick, can you tell people a little bit about yourself, the Rise and Above podcast? What does it do? What's it about? What made you want to start it? Things like that.
Yeah, the Rise and Above podcast, it's a platform where generally anybody can come on and share their personal stories of overcoming. When I started it, though, I didn't really have an intent. Like, I didn't really know what it was that I wanted to do. Other than I knew that I wanted to share my story, and I felt that my story was so, I guess, like, amazing, because like a lot of people who had gone through some of the things that I had gone through end up in like prison or jail. I mean, that was something that was always told to me, like, you're not going to amount to anything. You're going to be a piece of crap. Like, you're not going to do anything with your life. And so I felt that, like hearing those things, and I'd felt that there had to be a lot of people like me who had overcome their issues, and their trauma and struggles in life. So I decided I want to share mine and kind of also raise some awareness about the foster care system, which ultimately didn't go over so well because it's such a tight-knit like community, and they're not too open to sharing too much. So I kind of diverted a little bit and started interviewing like local businesses, people in the community, and also people nationally. It's been quite a ride. It's been 2 years this month since I started the podcast.
Well, I mean, you even had some pretty big names on, like a very particular person you got a lot of hate for when you had him on.
Yeah, I interviewed Ryan Kelly, and he is super controversial. But that wasn't the reason why I had him on. Like, most people would have him on because they probably agree with a lot of his ideologies. They want to like kind of like throw things at the wall to see if it sticks in their echo chambers. But for me, like, I knew he was controversial, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to talk to him. I want to see what this guy's all about. And so I just talked to him. It was nothing controversial. We just sat down and had just a normal conversation. But in doing so, I got a bunch of hate, a bunch, which ultimately just helped me, grow a little bit. So,
you know what they say, all press, bad press is, no, all press is good press.
All press, exactly.
See, this is why we don't do live streams, because I stutter and stumble.
I think people can appreciate that. I think they'll appreciate the fact that it's authentic.
Is that what we're calling my my tism now? But
Yeah, authentic. That's what I call mine.
so anyway, so okay, this is a platform you have where people come on, they kind of just share their stories, right? So you've had some wild rides in there, and one of the best parts about probably what you do is the fact that you literally sometimes you get in the conversations and you don't even know what's going to be said, because you have people from all sorts of backgrounds with all sorts of different beliefs on all the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you guys think I'm ecumenical, you should talk to him. And this guy you're able to ebb and flow. So,
yeah, I mean, like you had mentioned, I had Ryan Kelly on, who is considered like I guess people would consider him like an alt-right type of person. But I also have had on like extreme left-wing people, like people who wanted to defund the police and were running for political office locally. And so it's like, even though some of those ideologies I don't necessarily agree with, but, I'm willing to sit down and just talk to them, hear their, what they're all about.
right. Well, and of course, that's one of the things we say on this channel regularly, which, of course, we're normally theology and philosophy, sometimes politics and social stuff, but generally speaking, theology and philosophy, we'd like to get into social stuff more, but we just don't have time to, because our culture is just, there's so much going on all the time. But that's one of the things that we say all the time, like, how can I even say I disagree with somebody if I'm not willing to sit down and talk to them, right?
Yeah.
So I need to be willing to have that conversation with them and chew on it, and maybe even question myself. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, how do you even know what you believe until you're questioned? Like, until you're held, until you have a conversation with somebody who believes the opposite of what you think you believe.
Right, and they challenge you, and you realize whether or not you did have good reasons or didn't have good reasons to believe what you believe.
Right, exactly.
So, with that being said, all right, so that's good, and that's so one of those things. Where can people find your podcast?
Oh boy, on YouTube, on Apple, Spotify, Google, anywhere you find a podcast. I mean, why do we even have to explain this?
All audio
today?
platforms. Okay.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Well, you'd be surprised. I have friends of mine who have podcasts that are like entirely YouTube channels, and I'm like, well, it's not really a podcast, but
what would you call that? Like a video cast or like a?
I would just call it a YouTube channel. But so yeah, also so that's so you can find him at Rising Above podcast with David Hess. That's where you're going to find him. Also, you have merch.
I do. I mean, it's not necessarily merch for the podcast. It's more or less like a clothing business that I started. But it's called Rising Above Apparel, which I guess goes hand in hand with a podcast.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like it sounds like it's merch.
Yeah, but it's really not. It's this, like the shirt. There's multiple different items in the store, but yeah, that's risingaboveapparel.com, and go check it out.
All right, cool. All right, sweet. Yeah. So anyway, now I didn't just want to have you on to just talk about and promote you. I also wanted you to tell people a little bit about yourself, because you and I have, obviously, if people have heard my story, and people who listen to our program regularly know my story. People hear my story and they go, wow, that's some pretty rough stuff. And what people don't realize is that I'm the G-rated version compared to you. The things I've been through were bad, but the things you went through are worse. And what's funny is that you and I have a very similar mentality when it comes to these things. And many people have heard this, I was very much almost canceled because of my hot takes on this, on victim culture and some of those issues. And it's not because, of course, I wasn't trying to be cruel, but just because as someone who has tried to have a victorious mindset over the horrible things that's happened to me, and those around me, it's one of those things where I'm like, well, no, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just actually want you to hear from people who've been through this, who have been through just as bad of things, if not worse things as you, and let you know that there is hope on the other side, right? Yeah. So would you mind just telling people, walking through the life of David Hess? And now I know you technically have 2 episodes.
Well, I have a few episodes. I mean, that's the thing about the podcast. Like, I have one episode where I talk, it's just me telling my story, but I do, my very first episode was with my brother Michael, and we talk about what life was like prior to like going into foster care. And then also the episode with Dad, him and I talk a lot about different things. But then also with you, when you were on, we talk a lot about things. And then obviously throughout the whole podcast, I mention things in my story. So.
Right. So if you want to go all the way back to the very beginning of Rising Above podcast, and you will find you telling your story.
Yeah. Yep.
So, okay, cool. So, all right, with that being, and now granted, this isn't going to be all of it, right? Like,
no,
you're not going to be able to go through all the details. That's why people need to go,
if I went through the whole story right now, we'd be here just me telling the story. I actually tried that on the podcast. I was like, I'm going to re-record this. And it was like a 2-hour podcast. And I'm like, I didn't even say everything. So yeah, just like the basis of it. Like I grew up in Florida till I was 9. And my stepdad at the time abused my brother Michael, and like to the point where like the back of his neck to his ankles was black and blue, and it was failed to be reported to the police. And so because my mom had waited so long to report it, it was like 2 weeks after it happened. The police were like, well, if you don't leave him, we're going to take you we're going to take the kids from you, and you're going to be arrested. And so we ended up leaving the state the very next day. When my mom only had $400 for her name, which if you think about it, like 4 kids, $400 and a vehicle driving from Florida to Michigan, like you could not do that today.
What could go wrong?
Like it's not even possible. I don't even know if you can make it to Kentucky.
Just those gas prices.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah, so we made the trek to Michigan, and like I just remember like that whole process thinking like I don't even know what life is going to be. Like we literally had nowhere we were going to go. We knew that we didn't have a place to stay. We just knew that we had to get to Michigan. And so like could you imagine that as a kid, like not knowing where you're going to like sleep the next night? Mm-hmm. Like it's wild to think about.
Right, such as children.
But as a kid, like also it was kind of exciting. And maybe it has something to do with my personality.
It just explains why you're broken. Keep going.
So we finally get to Michigan, and we're living in a homeless shelter for a few months. And then we ended up getting kicked out of the homeless shelter, and it left us homeless in Lansing, Michigan, obviously. And I just remember being put up in the Red Cross put us up in a hotel to stay for a few weeks. And every single night we would go to the city rescue mission and eat dinner. And I believe that was our only meal every day was that. Because I just remember being hungry, always hungry, and going there. And I talk about it on my podcast too, but it's funny to think about. Like I remember standing in line waiting to go inside and looking around at all these homeless people with these scraggly beards and like homeless looking clothing. I was like, man, these people are like bad off. Like they have life really bad, but like not even
so disconnected from the fact that you're one of them.
Right. Exactly. Like I'm homeless too, and I'm a kid. But yeah, so that went on for a few months or a few weeks. I mean, and then we were picked up from school and taken into foster care. And that was like, for me, that was probably one of the most defining moments in my life, because I just didn't know what was going to become. Like, I just remember having all these questions, but no answers. Like, when am I going to see my siblings next? Like, am I ever going to see my mom again? Like, if you think about it, it's probably like one of the most traumatic things you can do to a child is take them away from a situation. Like, even though they're in an unstable environment, but take them away from an environment that they're even slightly comfortable with and put them in a completely, estranged situation. Mm-hmm. And with, people that you don't even know, and like a new town, new school, everything. And so, yeah, that's what life was there for a little bit for me, was like trying to figure out like, who are these people, and like the school, like what is this? Like, what is life? And figuring out like, am I ever going to see my family again? And yeah, that was probably like one of the most like defining moments for me, like growing up.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 9.
9, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then you go into foster care, and for those of you guys who do not know, clearly David being my brother, we don't look alike.
Yeah, we do. We've heard that we do.
Yeah. So David was adopted by my family through the foster system. And so it is actually funny, because we've gotten one of two reactions when we'd introduce ourselves as brothers. Either people go, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I can see the resemblance." And you go, "No, you can't." Or the people would go like, "Nah, show me some ID," and we'd literally have to show ID.
Yeah, that's happened a few times.
So with that whole, so you're 9 years old, you're taken away from your mom, you're already in an abusive home with the stepdad, and that was really that you're clearly, I know you're breezing over that. There's a lot of BS that happened.
Do you know what's interesting about that whole thing? And I don't even know if I mentioned this on my podcast, but I remember like living in Florida, and like during some of the times of abuse, I remember thinking like, man, I wish I had a better life. Like, I just wish I could have a new family. and then boom.
Careful what you wish for. So you go into foster care, and then you get assigned my home,
Yeah,
right? By
yeah.
our family,
Yeah.
or your other family. In your case, you're like one of those people who have a lot of family now.
Yeah, that's a
So what was that whole situation like? Well, okay, so you're in foster care. Were you staying at the agency then for a little bit before they assigned you to homes? How was that entire process?
No, it was that was an interesting experience because we were picked up from school, and like most of that is a blur, but I just remember like different things. And I remember like when I got into the vehicle of the social worker, it was in Lansing, and the school was right by the Board of Water and Light smokestack towers. So like I remember getting in and like looking up at the towers and thinking like, man, this is probably the last time I'm ever going to see these towers again. But then like from there, I don't remember the drive. Like I'm sure I was crying my eyes out because I'm like, what is life at this point? And so we finally get to the agency, and I just remember as we're pulling in, our clothes are just sprawled out all over the steps, and
I remember this
because there was like cockroaches and stuff in our bags of clothing, and like that was like one of the most, I guess, like what would you call it? Like it was embarrassing, but it was like super vulnerable because like your underwear is laying out on the steps for everybody who walks by to see, and so that was embarrassing. And let alone the whole situation.
I remember
itself.
I walked in with those still there.
Yeah,
We
you
were
probably
walking
did.
to the agencies. I remember walking by that. Then I realized that they were like, "Oh, those are your soon-to-be new foster brothers."
Those disgusting people.
Clothes. And I heard that they were looking for roaches. Actually, one lady squealed and flipped out because she saw one, and so she literally squealed like, "Ah!" and, like freaking out. It was really like. Yeah, it's funny you're saying this. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. I distinctly remember this. Keep going.
Yeah, so we walk in, and I don't remember much from that. I just know that from there we were assigned to our families, and then we walked out, and I think I was handed like a teddy bear or something from Donna, and then we got in the car and then started driving to Charlotte, where we lived.
Now, Donna, that's my mom, right?
That's your mom.
That's
yeah.
my mom.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I should specify. I call her Donna, but I don't really have much of a relationship with her anymore. So
Yeah, it's okay. You're good. I just want to make sure that when you say that, I'm going to clarify for you, so you're good.
yeah. So I don't know. Like in that moment, like there was really not much that could make life better, because like I remember when we were on our way to Charlotte, Donna was like trying to make me feel better or us better, Joey and I, by taking us shopping, getting us new clothes. I think we even maybe went to McDonald's or something. But like in that moment, I did not care. Like I was like, I don't even know what life, like I don't know, like what am I doing here?
Right.
I don't belong here.
One of the things, my earliest memories of you was down in the living room all the time, and we watched Monsters Incorporated on repeat. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
We watched Monsters Inc. so much.
It is a good movie, but I hate it now.
Yeah. Probably because you watched it so much back in your most traumatizing time in life.
Yeah, probably.
But it's funny. Eliana, my daughter, loves it, and it was on, and I haven't seen it forever. And it was on, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" First off, I forgot how good this movie is. Secondly, all I remembered was that was when you came into our home, when me watching this. So I'm surprised you don't remember that. But yeah, you and Joey, that was like it was like almost like a therapeutic movie.
Yeah,
I feel like for you guys. So yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, that's interesting because like I mean they say that about people who've gone through traumatic experiences is that, like you remember certain things, you forget about certain things, and there's always things that like when you and I talk about like the past that I always forget, like because so much trauma has happened that my brain like has tried protecting me, and so I just forget certain things. Mm-hmm. But a lot of things I still remember. I'm like, I wish I could just forget that. but yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, I don't know. Like I guess we probably should talk about like when we started bonding a little bit, because like when I came into the home, we weren't close. Like
no, we were hostile.
We kind of butted heads.
You were in my territory.
Yeah, what was that? Like were you just like another foster kid I don't want to have to share toys with? Like what is
Well, it was so whenever we had foster kids in, the foster kids took over the entire everything. The entire family, it was all about the foster kids. When we go to church, all my parents ever talked about, especially mom, all they were talking about was the foster care, foster kids, foster care, foster kids. Half the time I was in the car going to visitations. Like my entire life revolved around it. So whenever we didn't have foster care, it felt like it stabilized. Mm-hmm. So, and also, for whatever reason, whenever we had the foster kids, mom, Donna, in your case, there's a reason why you call her by her first name, she would go crazy. So there was always two kids, and one of them, for whatever reason, she treated like was Gabriel himself, like the archangel, just greater than even her own children, her own biological children. Treated one like gold, and the other one she treated. If you're familiar with the book, A Child Called It, it's the best description I can give to the way she would treat them, and I'm without really exaggerating.
You know, it's funny because she read that book.
Yeah,
And I wonder if like sometimes if she like tried implementing some of those things
like
that she, that
oh,
lady
that's a
did
good
to
tip
that
from
kid.
that abusive mom. I'll try it. So what ended up happening? So that's why I hated it, because it was always somebody new, and whenever it was somebody new, then it was just going to be more chaos in the home, and I hated it. And then on top of that, like I don't know you, so it's like somebody's now in my home, and now I don't know this person, and it's just, oh, now it's going to be all about this person again, like watching Monsters Inc. on repeat. Well, no longer is it my family, now it's just these people run the show, and it was very difficult for. I mean, because you're talking. I mean, we were doing foster kid care since I was like 8.
You know, that's interesting too, because like a lot of people when they. Like you hear a lot about like the foster kid side of the story, like, oh, that poor kid, which, like it is a poor situation.
Yeah,
like,
it's way worse than mine.
But you also like don't think about like the people that it does affect, like the kids, because like I mean, like you had mentioned, you just wanted like a stable home. You wanted to be able to just live a normal life, and you can't, because now it's all about these people. That's
right.
Yeah, that's
it's a different side of the coin, and it's funny the more you think about it that way. So that there are different sides to all of it, and it's not, and your situation is way worse, but because at least I'm at home. I'm annoyed with my home situation, but you don't even have a home, right? Like this is not your home. So with that so that whole situation was interesting, but then you and I started getting to know each other really more and more. And at first there was hostility. I think I was more territorial, and definitely more. I don't know what's the word, more distant at first, just due to everything. But then over time, I think, I don't know there wasn't a single thing that made it click. I think we just kind of warmed up.
Well,
I think remember one?
No, I don't. And I was going to ask you that because I guess in my opinion, I think that the reason why we got so close was because of a lot of the things that was going on in the home.
That is true.
And I think it kind of forced us, because I'm sure you felt bad for me. And you're like, I need to help this kid out, because I don't even honestly remember when a lot of like the abuse and like that stuff started in the home. Like, because I know that it was fine at first, but
yeah, a lot of that's kind of fuzzy for me.
Yeah. So but it started at a certain point. I don't remember when.
Yeah, but I also remember, I think you and I had different interests too for a while. So you were like really big into cowboys. I was really big into superheroes, right? I was a huge Star Wars junkie, and you still love cowboys. So it was very like, I don't even know how to play with this kid. He likes cowboys. I like lightsabers. This is stupid. So, but then over time we became really good.
Cowboys are still cooler. I'm not gonna lie.
That's a lie. Lightsabers are so much cooler than a 6-shooter. Anyway, but so I think what ended up happening was we actually really did start becoming brothers. Like it was less of a foster brother, it was more of my brother, and then there was that whole back and forth for a while. I don't want to get too far ahead where, when your mom's rights were getting terminated, and then my parents chose to adopt you. It's not, and so that happened. And in fact, we had a family meeting without you guys there. I think I've told you about this, where Dad sat down with me, Melinda, Mom, and was like, all right, their aunt passed away. She's not able to adopt them. I want to adopt them. What do you kids think? And I remember going well, David and I are cool. Like David and I are super tight, and we could adopt him. But I wasn't so sure about Joe. Our other brother, your half brother, my adopted brother. It's very confusing. Our brother, Joe, and I was like, I'm not sure about him because him and I butt heads. But Mom was like, and Mom, who hated your guts, literally said, I want to adopt Joey, but I do not want to adopt David. That was her like exact verbatim. And I remember going, well, okay, if we're not okay with that, like I'm like okay with Joey, I'm just not like tight with him, but I really am too cool with adopting David for sure. And this was back when I was like 11, I don't know.
Don't judge you for thinking that.
What?
Don't judge you for thinking
that. Don't judge me for thinking I'm a kid, whatever. This is big decisions for a child. Everyone's like, wow, he was a douche canoe. But when it came into that, then I was like, all right, well, I just don't think we should probably adopt it as my mindset, because it's like if we can't agree on what's best, and mom literally was like, not David, but Joe, is like, well, you can't have it both ways. So I remember just being like, all right, so we shouldn't. And then they were like, we're going to, and then like a couple days later, we've talked, we're going to adopt. I'm like, okay, that's going to go smoothly because mom and David get along so well already. And it, of course, went downhill from there.
Yeah, that was a interesting thing because I remember, like, I obviously wanted to be adopted, but at the same time, I didn't because I knew that like all this, like the turmoil in the home had started already. But the thing is, like, Donna was always, she was trying to get me to, like, I guess persuade, like cry about wanting to be adopted. And, so, you know, that's what I did. Like I would go up to dad and, you know, like, I want to be adopted. Which,
Oh, mom, she put you up to that?
yeah, she did.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Didn't we talk about it on
I don't
podcast
remember.
together?
Maybe,
I thought we did.
Again, blurry the trauma stuff and childhood. It's all a blur.
Yeah. So like she would say things to me like, well, if you don't agree, if we don't adopt you, you might be adopted by somebody else and Joey might be adopted by somebody else. And I didn't want to be separated. I wanted to be with him because like, what other family do I have? And then she would say things like, well, Michael's getting adopted. Michael was adopted. Like, don't you want to be adopted? Like things like that. Things that would make me be like, yeah, I just want to be adopted because like, I don't want to have to go to a different home in a different freaking city.
Do this all over again.
Right, exactly.
Like, I'm finally settled in here.
And the way she had always made it seem was like I was just this terrible child and like that nobody would ever want me. So I was like, well, if it's nobody ever wants me, then I might as well like just stick it out here.
Yeah,
at least I'll be
call
with
my bet, and at least
I'll be with my brother. So so yeah, that's why I begged to be adopted. And yeah, eventually was adopted. But I remember like shortly after that is when she went to jail for abuse. It was literally like a couple months after it was finalized.
Yeah, no, that's what made it. So yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. So you were adopted. I already kind of explained a little bit of the adoption story. I remember when we told you as a family, like I remember you teared up, you gave dad a hug. Because you also
notice I gave him a hug, not her.
Yeah. Trust me, I am aware. But so this whole, and you also knew that dad was probably the one that was made the ultimate decision there, and and that's the thing is that you and dad always got along pretty well, like for the most part. You and dad connected pretty well, still do. Oh, by the way, I never say this because I just tell my story so matter of factly. I feel like we should both say it that we have a perfectly fine relationship with dad.
Yeah.
So before we get into some of the crazy stuff that we're about to discuss, I just want you to know we have a great relationship with dad. My dad's coming over on Sunday. He actually asked when the live stream was. I think he's one of the people probably watching now. For all I know, that or he'll watch us later.
Dad, if you're watching, comment.
Dude, he's a boomer. He doesn't know how keyboards work. Stop. No, he just gave him anxiety. So, with dad, like we're cool there now. Mom, you have definitely broken off a relationship.
Yeah.
I broke off a relationship with my mom for 2 years, and then I kind of reconnected, but now she has dementia. And now I talk to her every once in a great while. We don't have a strong relationship at all, but it's just, she's my mom. So I'm going to kind of like how you looked up your mom after adoption, but now I'm getting to spoiler territory. So let's talk for a minute about the abuse that you experienced in my home, because you experienced abuse already by your stepdad and some crap there. Then you get thrown into this foster system, which already is traumatizing enough. You're stripped away from your mom. You're with your one brother, Joey, but you're away from, Michael and Tiana, your brother and sister. I mean, that's a lot of trauma. That's a lot for a 9-year-old to be trying to process.
Yeah, definitely.
And then it gets to the point where you get thrown into this house. And like I said, my mom treated one always like an angel. She loved Joey, but she did not love you. And I remember, even though Joey and I butt heads, I still loved the kid. And so I still didn't understand. I just never understood where that bipolarness came from, that duality. What was that like? What was the slow descent into it? What were some of the things that you experienced in the household? And now I know that that's a huge list. So go ahead and be selective however you want to go about it.
Oh boy, that's a pretty broad question. I don't know. I mean, again, like I don't even remember when it started, so I don't even remember what my initial thoughts were on it. But like I just knew that like it felt like I was like hated essentially. And I guess like I just wanted like peace, you know, most of the time. Like I just wanted to like try to make her happy. And if I could make her happy and she was happy, then I was happy. But I knew that like we were constantly living in fear of her just possibly freaking out over something, or I would, you know, like be constantly worried about like, is she gonna think I'm lying about something? Like there's always some sort of fear.
No, when we say freak out, what kind of thing are we talking about when we're saying freak out?
Oh
Because
boy. I feel like this is a therapy session.
It is. It is. Hello, my name is Will. I'll be your therapist for today. I want the audience to understand what we're saying, because people hear freak out, they think somebody yelled.
Yeah, you're right. And that's something my wife Amanda is always telling me. She's like, you need to tell like more of your story, and you need to like be more specific about things. And I'm pretty broad. Like it's just because I know what happened, so I guess I assume everybody else does too. But like freak out for me in the home, like with Donna, was like she would throw an adult temper tantrum, and she would throw things and strip,
Literally strip her clothes.
literally get naked. She would spit in your face, slap you. Like
I remember distinctly when you were way behind in education. And she was frustrated because you weren't up to par with me and Melinda. She compared you to us all the time.
yeah, she would make you feel dumb, like you were just stupid.
Yeah,
like
when
outright
really you're
stupid.
just a kid who is
Struggling.
struggling because you're put in horrible situations and not educated properly.
Right.
And then she'd slap you in the face if you got something wrong and call you stupid, that you're never going to amount to anything.
Yeah.
I
I mean, I guess one of the things that made me feel like the dumbest was when I was homeschooled, and you know, obviously I struggled with school, and she was bound and determined to help catch me up. And she wasn't a professor in any means, but she would like force me to sit there all day long until I finished my schoolwork. And so I just distinctly remember I would start school before you started school, and then I wouldn't finish until I went to bed. Literally, I would fold up my little dinner tray table thing and take a shower and go to bed. And I would have the same math paper in front of me all day long, and I would try to get her to help me, and she couldn't help me. Instead, she'd just make me feel like I was stupid for not knowing. And yeah, that was probably one of the most, I guess, difficult things as far as like feeling
bit demoralizing.
demoralized. Yeah.
Yeah. And then some of the other things that stick out in my mind was the only way I can describe it is that you were a household slave to her.
Yeah, I say that I was like Cinderella. I was like the male.
That's accurate.
Yeah, I was like a Cinderella. Anytime that I got in trouble, I would have to, my punishment was to clean. Like, oh, you lied about this? Well, now you have to go.
Dad is in the chat.
Oh, boy.
What do you say? I'm here. Also didn't know Donna made you feel like nobody would want you. That just burns my hind end. I heard that in his voice. Hi, Dad. Good to see you. Thanks for hanging
funny.
out with the rest of us. Anyway, don't want to get too distracted there. I get so distracted by live chats. I just
It's so easy. Yeah.
I have to look away.
So, where was I going? What was I saying?
You were talking about Cinderella.
Oh yeah,
The
so
male
like
Cinderella.
anytime I would like lie about something, I would end up having to do an enormous amount of chores, which didn't ever equate to the crime.
And when you say
committed.
lie about something, what do you mean?
It could be saying something that was true, but she didn't want to hear was the truth. Or it could be talking back, which was literally anything. Like I remember like she literally asked me one time, why did you do this? And I don't remember what it was, but I gave her a reason. She said, you're talking back to me. And I was like, you literally just asked me.
You asked me.
And then I got grounded. Like there was periods of time where I was literally grounded for months, like a whole year. There was like, I was probably grounded for like 9 months out of that year. It was wild.
Yeah.
And then it becomes one of those things that like, you kind of expect it. So like, oh, I'm in trouble again. I'm going to get grounded. What is it? What's another week? What's another 2 weeks? I might as well become smart. Like I might as well like give a smart remark or like call her an idiot or
Yeah, I
something.
may as well really take this and have fun with it.
And that's what I started doing because that's obviously my personality. Like I'm a smart aleck. So whenever something like that happened, I would make her look like the idiot.
Yeah, you'd spout off. I still can't remember. I distinctly remember this one time you had a cheeky grin going down the stairs when she sent you to her room after grounding you for another week. And you said something, and I don't remember what. I just remember it contained the word bitch. And I just remember She absolutely flipped a lid. I don't remember what it was because you never swore to mom up to that point. And you you threw out some adult language there, and then you gave me a look. The look you gave me was like, I chose violence, and I'm okay with that. I was just like, what have you done? She came unglued. It was glorious.
Yeah, and I mean, like, and that's there was just so many things like that. Like, whenever something like that happened, eventually, like over time, I just stopped caring. Like, I stopped trying to please her. I stopped trying to make her happy because I knew that like it was just a matter of time. Like, I could make her happy today, but tomorrow she's gonna freak out about something, and it's not even gonna matter.
And some of the things that would happen as well would be like a continual threatening to like discontinue the adoption and send you back to the agency.
Yeah, like there was quite a few times where even after we were adopted, like I remember one specific scenario. The volleyball net was up for like a family reunion, and she told me to take care of it because I think I had a mow or something, and I was trying to take care of it, and it was all tangled up. Like the net was all tangled, and the little strings that tie it down were tangled. And she went out there to check, and she was like, "It's all tangled. You need to unravel it and redo it." And so I pulled it out, and Mr. Hunter, our neighbor, seen me struggling with it. I was out there forever, like trying to untangle it, and couldn't figure it out. And he came over. He's like, "You want some help with that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess, sure." And she seen him help me, and she freaked out on me. And she came out, and I think he might have been out there when she was saying something to me like, "That's a punishment. You don't need to be helping him," or something. And so when we went inside, she was again in one of her rages. She went down, grabbed everything out of the wardrobe, and took it out front and just threw it all into the front yard. And was like, "I'm sending you back to the agency," and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, is that what that one was? I
Yeah,
just remember
yeah.
the stuff out, all your belongings.
Oh,
in
that
our
happened a
front
few
yard.
times.
That's true. That did happen a few times.
Yeah, that wasn't just an isolated incident. So, but yeah, that's just one of them that I remember. And so, yeah. And then, again, being like 12, 13 years old, devastated by like, I'm going to get sent back to the agency,
Yeah, back to the trauma again. It was the
Right.
constant dangling of the carrot of your trauma,
Right.
while also giving you more. See, that's the
Yeah.
best part, but compounded it.
Yeah, made me stronger.
Now, so then you had like I just think through. You also remember her making like 3-piece meals with
Oh, boy.
steak and potatoes, and she'd give you nothing but plain oatmeal.
Yeah, there for a long time, I had a very strong dislike for oatmeal. But now knowing that it's healthy, I eat it and I don't mind it. Of
course you
so
do.
much.
But like she would actually sit there and make
Yeah.
everyone eat a full meal.
Yeah, I remember like people would eat steak. Like you guys were eating steak, and there was a time where I had to eat oatmeal, plain oatmeal with nothing in it at all.
It happened regularly. It happened
Yeah.
enough. It happened enough where it was a commonality.
And again, it's interesting because like I didn't even realize, like, I don't even realize now, like, how often that was. But now that you mention it, it was quite often.
It was very often.
I try to forget a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I know.
So,
Which is why I'm asking you to I'm asking you to reach deep into the recesses of your trauma and bring it out. And then she ended up getting arrested one day because now David's being pretty vague here, but it was explosive. I cannot explain to you how explosive these tantrums were. When we're saying stripping, we're talking like
explosive. Like she would, like I think the argument or whatever started downstairs, and I was upstairs in Melinda's room watching my Bob Jones University math video or whatever it was, and I'm sitting on the floor in front of the TV watching it. And the whole time that I'm trying to watch it, I know that there's an argument going on downstairs with Dad and her. Dad's probably trying to like defend me in some way, but really he's probably just trying to like keep her from trying to murder me in that moment. And so
the argument was about you.
yeah, it's always about me.
Yeah.
Like it was always about me.
Because mom was paranoid that you were this mastermind manipulator that was tearing their marriage apart. Like she was like, remember that she accused you of tearing apart the marriage, and it was
Yeah.
hilarious because it's like, no, you're tearing apart your marriage. But anyway,
yeah, that's very interesting because like you're gonna let a 13-year-old ruin your marriage.
yeah, like wow, deep
come
love.
on,
but then
on.
she marched upstairs while you're doing your own thing and proceeded to like kick
Yeah.
you while
Yeah,
you're just you're minding your own business.
She barged in the room, and I think Melinda was in there too. And she ran in the room, like kicked me in the stomach, grabbed her purse, ran out. I'm crying, come running out. Dad comes running upstairs, like, "What's going on?" And she grabs me and throws me into the refrigerator. And honestly, I don't think it hurt me when she threw me into the refrigerator, but I was like, "Oh, that hurt." It might have hurt a little bit, but I think I overplayed that a little bit just because like
That's all the drama,
like,
man.
at that point, like you kicked me in the stomach. So dad threw her to she flipped a card table with the puzzle pieces all over it and it went flying. There's puzzle pieces all over it. Like it was like a fit of rage. Like you think of like a mad person, like somebody coming into the studio, just flipping desks and throwing stuff,
screaming obscenities,
screaming and throwing stuff. Like that was her. And
regularly, by the way, this isn't a one-time thing. This was Tuesday. You know what I mean? Like, oh,
Yeah.
it's Tuesday. Oh, it's Thursday. Mom was going crazy.
like it's so regular that like if it started happening, I could just turn around and walk to my room and be like, "Yep, there it goes again."
And so then Dad called the police, and
Yeah, he threw her to the ground, pinned her down, and called the police. But what was funny about that whole situation was he's like freaking out on the phone, like, just get somebody here. And they're trying to ask him all these questions, like, have you been drinking? Or is there and he's like, I just get somebody here. And so he hangs up, and then next thing you know, like 30 police officers roll up.
somebody was it. So they're like, all right, so this guy needs somebody.
Oh my gosh, there was so many police there.
Place is crawling with
Like
cops.
that was probably one of the glorious moments, like out of all of that stuff that happened, like in the trauma and all the like explosive temper tantrums, that was probably the best thing ever, because I remember like, they were arresting her and she's like, I don't need handcuffs. And they're like, oh, we have to put you in handcuffs. She's like, I'm willing to go. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's what she's like. Well, I'm willing to go, and it's like, you don't have a choice.
No, you don't have a choice in this matter.
So yeah, then she got arrested, but then she was only like in it for like a weekend or something. But
I think it was a day.
And
Unfortunately, Dad bailed her out.
yeah, and then they expunged it from the record.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I don't want to talk too much about like all this, but starting the podcast, that's one thing I wanted to do, was bring awareness to a lot of the things that go on in the foster care system. It's like there's a lot of good things that happen in the system. Like I just had my sister Tiana on the podcast the other day, and we talked about like her home life and her adopted parents. Like they're amazing people. Mm-hmm. They gave her a great home life. They loved her. Like I went to her wedding last year, and like it made me want to cry because like
they're good people.
They're good people, and they gave her everything like as if they were like that was their daughter. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like that's truly amazing. Mm-hmm. But then you get like a lot of bad things that happen, like the things that happened to us, and then continue to happen even after I moved out. I'm like, that needs to be exposed. Like that's a problem, and the foster care system knew about it, and they didn't do anything.
Yeah, the fact that they could expunge the record afterwards, but they weren't alerted as the foster system wasn't alerted that this took place,
and they still found out about it. Like at a certain point when I got older and became a little bit more rebellious and got a cell phone, and they didn't know about it. And the abuse was getting worse. I would call almost daily to report it to social services, and other people were called and reported it. I know so many people that have called and reported it, and they still did nothing. They would come out and investigate. And I remember one specific time because I called them, and it was me who reported this. So breaking news here. Mm-hmm. I had mentioned that she had gone to jail before for abusing me, and the foster care system didn't even know about it. So they alerted the agency. The agency came out and investigated it. And I remember being in the room, hearing them talk to her, and they asked her, "Did you go to jail for child abuse?" And she was quiet, and she's like, "How did you find out about that?" Because she thought it was expunged. They weren't supposed to know about it. But and then she said, "Yeah, it happened, but it hasn't happened since." And they're like, "Okay, well, if it happens again, we have to take your license." And in that moment, I'm like, she answered yes to child abuse, for going to jail for child abuse, and you're investigating it, and you're just going to allow that?
Yep.
And so, like, starting the podcast, that's one thing I wanted to expose, but that hasn't really gone anywhere yet.
Right.
So.
Well, then what we ended up happening is there's other foster kids that came through after us, after you, and once we moved out, like as kids. And then I remember there's one of them, I won't say his name, I don't want to, but him and I still talk. And he was like, I just don't understand, because I felt like she hated me and everything. And I don't understand why I just couldn't understand why she wanted me in her home as a foster kid while also hating me. Yeah. And because the way she treated him, I came home from college break once and was like, oh my gosh, this is David 2.0.
The way and I know who you're talking about. but the way, and that kid had a lot of things that was messed up, but he had gone through a lot of stuff, like a lot of bad stuff happened to him, but he had also done a lot of bad stuff too.
As a
But
6-year-old.
as a 6-year-old. But the way she treated him, because he had done those bad things, was that as if he was a criminal.
Right.
And like he wasn't even allowed to play with kids, like the neighbor kids in the backyard, where she could watch him. He wasn't allowed to play with them because she's already treating him like an other.
Right.
She had already othered him, like he's just in prison.
Right.
Like he deserves that.
Right.
And so like that I don't know, that's a messed up situation.
But I mean, just in general though, you ended up getting to the point where you were so stressed with all the abuse that was going on that you literally started losing hair.
Yeah, in fact, I have a bald spot right now, but like that would happen to me quite often.
But it was all over, and you had a patch like that big.
I had like $half size spots in the back of my head, like 3 of them from stress. And I remember going to the doctor too, and that was the thing. Like during that time, I had so much stress. Like I had started dating a girl, and they didn't approve of it, so then it made life a lot harder and a lot more stressful. So I started getting locked out of the house because I was hanging out with her. Shouldn't be hanging out with her. And I was going to school, still in high school, and doing my homework, like still trying to like get through life. And she's making life harder. Dad was on second shift, so she would lock me out of the house till 11 o'clock at night when he got home. And I couldn't do laundry there, couldn't eat there, couldn't do my homework on the computer. Like I couldn't use anything, couldn't shower.
You were like 16.
I was 17. And it got to the point where I was just like, you know what? Like, well, I was so stressed out. I had bald spots. I had developed bald spots. But I remember talking to my buddy Chad and about it because he had called me one night on my illegal cell phone and was like, "Hey man, what are you up to?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm at my girlfriend's house." And he's like, "Oh, really? Like it's kind of late." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just waiting to get home." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm locked out of the house." And explained to him what was going on. And he's like, "That is BS." He's like, "You know what? I'm gonna call my mom and I'm gonna see if you can live with us." And I was like, "What? Really?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You're going to live with us. We're going to take care of you." He's like, "But I'm going to call and confirm." And so he called his mom, called me back like a couple of minutes later and was like, "I'm coming to get you. We're going to your house to get your stuff." He's like, you're coming home with me. And I'm like, okay. And like, I just remember like so many thoughts are going through my mind, but like my main thought at the time was like, again, like what is life going to be? Like I had been told that, oh, sorry, hold on.
You've successfully run over my sign.
Trying to ruin his studio.
Yep.
My main thought was like, because I had always been told like you're never going to amount to anything, and so that was always my biggest fear was I'm going to be just this piece of crap. I'm going to be every like statistic that I was told I was going to be, and I don't even know how I'm going to make it in life now, because like I don't have the financial support. Like I have to figure that out on my own now, and so I said, screw it. Why not? I have nothing to lose. And so I went home, grabbed literally everything I needed, like all my books for school, a couple outfits, and I left everything else in like 2 clothes baskets. And I started walking upstairs. And I know Dad's watching. He doesn't like this, but he had said to me, like, "Where are you going?" I was like, "I'm moving out. I've had enough." And he's like, "Well, don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out." And that moment right there, I was like, "Yep, I'm going to do this." Like, I'm not going to ever depend on you guys.
Throw the gasoline right on that fire, Dad. Good job.
And so, I know he's not proud of it. He's apologized for that several times.
Yeah.
And
to be fair on Dad's part, Mom was absolutely crazy and pushed everyone to the point of an absolute breaking point. After there was one time even Mom got crazy after I had surgery. I think I told a story on your podcast.
Yeah.
I was recovering from surgery and she got violent again and I had to stop her physically.
Yeah, that one was funny because I was in the shower and she was trying to rip me out because, again, I had these stupid like draconian rules where I couldn't take a shower past a certain time. And even though she had us out running errands all evening and it was past the time where I could take a shower, we got home later and I just assumed like, oh, we were out running errands or whatever, I can take a shower. She's the one who had us out. So I went to go take a shower.
Oh, so that's where you're wrong. You expected her to take responsibility. But
yeah, exactly. So she came in and told me I needed to get out. And I was like, no, I got soap all over me. I'm washing up. And she's like, shut the water off right now. And I was like, no, I'm not. And this is during my like kind of rebellious stage a little bit too, where I'm
Well, you
like,
started
I've had
fighting
enough.
back. You were for so long. You were just a doormat, just getting ran over like crazy,
Yeah.
trying to please a crazy person. And then you were kind of hit a point where you're like, I'm done trying to please a crazy person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
you
you
changed tactics.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so I just made
Adapt, overcome.
I just made her life like literally a living hell, like because she made mine hell. So I was like, I'm gonna make hers hell. So I just refused, and I remember she like shut the light off on me, and I was like, I was washed up at that point, and I just sat in the shower because I'm like, she's gonna shut the light off on me, like I'm not getting out. So she came back in, turned the light back on, and then she tries pulling me out of the shower, and then that's when you came up, and you had just had your surgery.
Yeah, limping along.
And yeah, so then you had to fight her off.
That was insane.
Oh, it was wild. So wild. It's so wild to think about. Like, this was literally our life.
Each and every day.
Each and every day.
Like,
And
I remember getting home from school and opening the door and like I'd stop for a minute and listen to see what the tone of the house was. Sometimes it was fine. Sometimes it was quiet. But when it was quiet, then I was like, ooh, why is it quiet? Is it because we're all distracted with something? Or is it because I just got done from the dust has settled from an explosion? Or sometimes I walk in and I hear, I'm like, oh, yep, there it is.
close the door, turn
Yep,
around, walk
time to
away.
leave. There was one time I also remember pulling in from school. I came back from school and you were actually, do you remember this, where it was in the middle of a blizzard basically in
Oh,
Michigan,
yeah.
and you were locked outside in like a shorts and t-shirt?
Yeah.
She locked you outside in socks, shorts, and a t-shirt.
Yeah,
And-
that was also the same day she spit in my face.
Yep. And I remember I had to go up there and I basically picked you up. I unlocked the door and she's like, no, he's not supposed to be inside. You put him outside. And I was like, I'm not leaving him outside in a blizzard in shorts, t-shirt, and socks. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, it's so wild to think about too, because like, I remember, like you said, that was a blizzard, and like most kids think about like when like a snow day happens, they're so excited, like they get to stay home from school, they get to play in the snow or whatever it was. Like it literally was to the point where I looked forward to going to school. Like I love school because it was like a refuge away from home, and like unfortunately, I guess for me, I never got really tied up into the wrong crowd, but yeah, I would like when all that stuff was going on, I would just focus more on like my homework and trying to do better, I guess.
Right. Well, then what ended up happening? Our therapy, so to speak, to help you was at night after mom and dad would go to bed. Dad is hard of hearing as heck. You know it's true. And mom, I don't know, she just wouldn't hear. So what I would do, because you were eating mostly oatmeal for days on end. You really don't remember that. It was regular.
Yeah.
But you were eating oatmeal all the time. You weren't allowed to eat normal meals like the rest of us. You were grounded so much where mom grounded you. She'd ground you from family time. And then dad would sometimes push back, but sometimes it wasn't worth it. So once they went to bed, I would knock on the door and be like, all right, she's been down for about 30 minutes. They're done. So we'd hang out until late at night, watch Bad Boys 1 and 2 way too many times. I still have them memorized. And
They're good movies.
we would hijack mom's car and we'd go to McDonald's. I'd get you like food. And it's so funny because I think we didn't tell dad about this for years. And then I mentioned it and dad's like, you did what? I was like, yeah, we totally, every time we opened the garage, I would sit there. Do you remember you'd be downstairs and I'd be upstairs waiting, like looking up the stairs, like one of these days they're going to hear this. And all right, get in. And we'd go take off. And he's like, you enjoy riding? I'm like, yep. He's like, and then now dad goes, I'm glad you guys did that. That's awesome. Like, cause he's like, it was hell for him too. Right.
Yeah.
So as much as like, yeah, okay, dad shouldn't have said that. He shouldn't have done some of the things he's done. But dad is like, yeah, I was pushed to a certain point. I made bad decisions when I was pushed to that point instead of divorcing her or protecting my children.
Yeah.
Cause he was raised in like a very independent fundamental Baptist. That's the world he lived in. He was convinced that any form of divorce or separation is absolutely unacceptable before
Right.
God. And so he was like, well, I can't. I have to protect my marriage. Which is just this very toxic teaching from the IFB. So anyway, with that being said, is there much more you wanted to cover in that department? Anything else before?
There was, and I don't remember what it was now.
I feel like this happens every time I talk about this with
Yeah,
family members. We just spider web.
We
'cause
do
there's so
spider
many
web.
crazy things.
There's so many. Yeah, I don't really know. Like, I don't really. Again, we've gone for almost an hour just talking about this, but I guess like what I mainly want to talk about is like not that, but it's like overcoming and
Right.
like trying to like better your life, because again, like the whole purpose of my podcast was to like show people that like even though you've had these bad things happen to you, you don't have to be a victim of it. Like you can rise
It
above.
doesn't have to define you.
And again, like that's something I see like quite often, especially in today's world with like social media and everything. There's a large victim culture, and
we empower victims to a point where they become toxic themselves.
right, and they feel like they're owed something, and
Mm-hmm.
you're not owed anything. Like you, just because you've had something bad happen to you doesn't mean somebody owes you anything. You
Right.
still have to work hard for whatever it is you want, and you
Right.
still have to try and make an effort to be a good person. And yeah, that's something that I've seen a lot.
Well, and the reason why I wanted to take just the time for you to explore your story just a little bit there was because I want people to understand that now we're about to talk about victim culture, that you know what you're talking about. You've been there, you've done it. Like literally, you've experienced every form of abuse possible known to man. Period.
Yeah.
All throughout your entire childhood.
Yeah.
And I mean, like every single one that you can think of that David's experienced.
Yep.
I've experienced them too, but you've experienced everything I experienced tenfold. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that's why I say all the time, like I was the one who, yes, I defended you, literally bled for you to protect you multiple times, but it was also because I was willing to go to that length to protect you because of how bad it was for you. Like I need people to understand the fact that it's like, yeah, Will went through that, but it's because if I didn't, the impact that would have on you was astronomically worse than it was going to be for me.
Yeah.
It was choosing the lesser of the two evils. So I distinctly remember there's plenty of times as well of holding mom back in a fit of rage from hitting you. The amount of times there's one time I distinctly remember confession from Will when because she'd get up at get you up at 5 a.m, drag you out, literally grab you by your whatever she could grab, rip you out of bed at 5 a.m, screaming at you because you left clothes in the dryer overnight.
Or didn't load the dishwasher right. Literally, it was like something so simple to the point. Like
you literally missed a crumb on a countertop when you cleaned the kitchen during one of your many endless chores, and I literally mean a crumb. If she found a crumb, it was the end of the world.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not talking about like, oh my gosh, you missed a crumb. I'm saying like absolute rage.
She would like literally go and and she would inspect everything, like to the point where she's like, like.
Literally white glove, like
yeah, white glove. Yeah.
So 5 a.m. that would happen. There's one time I distinctly remember she did that, and she went and was going all over you on it. 6 a.m. now at this point, I've been hearing it for about 30 minutes, and I'm like, I'm stopping this. So I went down there in my underwear, completely in my underwear, grabbed her, ripped her out. She's yelling at me while I'm walking up the stairs. I'm like, it is too early for this nonsense. Why do you do this? And then we got to the foyer for the first set of stairs, and then she screams in my ear, and I snapped. I literally turned around, put my entire arm into her throat, and like picked her up into the wall and like held her there for a minute. And I was like, oh, I should probably not choke out my mom. And like I snapped. I was very violent back then. And then I know you and I, as we got older, you and I both started becoming more toxic.
So you're an abusive misogynist.
Yes. What's wrong with that? Anyway, no, just kidding. Jokes. Oh my gosh, you are going to get me canceled. Brian was right. So then what ended up happening after that, you and I'll just give the quick Cliff Notes version. You can hear the full thing on when I was on your podcast. But Dave and I ended up butting heads later because him and I started going different paths and dealing with the toxicity differently. And you could say you and I became toxic in our own sense because we were both hyped up, angry.
I was just trying to survive.
Yeah.
I mean, like I had to go through life with a chip on my shoulder. Otherwise, I wasn't going to survive.
Right.
Like,
Well, again, in the same here, I was like, well, I have to do this in order to survive too.
Right.
So it put you and I at odds for a minute, and then we realized both later that was stupid, and we should, like, wow, that was really childish. Like, really should just backed you up like we always did. Why did I turn on you? And you're like, yeah, why did we get that way? I'm like, I don't know, stupid. But anyway, here's the thing. Okay, so that's all very depressing, and I know scattered. I apologize. There may have been stories that we started in there that we didn't finish. Sorry, to be continued. But what ended up happening through that was you move out at 17 years old. You work a lawn care job. You work part-time at GM. You are working all the time. You build up a life for yourself. And then you get married, and now you have 2 kids, and things are going well. You have your own podcast. So you turn into an absolute machine as far as being like, I'm going to survive, and I'm not going to be a statistic. Can you I want to talk about that a little bit because I know many people who've been through way less than, not that it's a competition, right? Like I have more trauma than you. But
Unfortunately, it does become that for a lot of people.
Yes, exactly. It becomes like a trauma measuring contest.
Yeah.
And and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But because I do know people who've been like, okay, so you were in a very difficult culty environment with authority issues, and they gaslit you. Okay, big whoop, move on.
Right.
But people just get bogged down with this. So tell me, what is the mindset that you had? What were the things that started triggering that you started implementing in your life so that you could become a victor as opposed to a victim?
Well, I mean, I guess like first thing, like there for a long time when I first moved out, I was trying to just make it. I was literally just working as much as I could, like making no money. And then I finally got a job at GM because of my dad putting my name in, and our dad, and
His mine too.
and that was like a game changer. And I knew that was a game changer. I knew that I needed to maximize that opportunity as much as possible. So that's when I started like working. Like I worked when I got hired into GM, I worked part-time. So I also worked another full-time job doing landscaping during the day, working at GM in the evenings twice a week. And so there was times like during that time period where I'd be up for over 24 hours straight just working. And I knew that like if I worked hard enough that eventually it would be worth it. And so my mindset then was just work, and then you can have like everything you ever wanted in life, essentially. I mean, because GM's like the dream job for anybody.
Well, especially here in Michigan, it's like a big thing.
Yeah, especially like, I mean, even like around the world, like the auto industry is known as like this golden ticket.
Right, it's a lucrative, right?
Right, but unfortunately for me, like it wasn't necessarily a lucrative ticket because like I'm a 2-tier employee, but it still was better than the jobs that I was working. Like I was still making more money hiring in. So, so like from there it was just trying to make it. And then I eventually got into working out because of my wife, Amanda. She was into like kettlebells and training and stuff. And then I started training with the guy that she was training with. And it wasn't something that I took seriously until I started competing in kettlebells. And then I kind of did, but kind of didn't. And then I don't know what it was. I think it was probably something to do with me having a home gym. I started focusing more on training and getting more fit and trying to like get stronger and having goals and whatnot. But like that process of trying to push yourself to do something difficult, like work out, is what will build anything. Like it'll build your mental state. It'll make you a stronger person, and it'll allow you to have greater appreciation for just things in life. So I guess for me that was like one of the defining factors. Like as an adult, was getting in shape and trying to work out, because it's kind of the basis of my life.
Right. Well, it becomes a goal, right? So
it's not just a goal; it's a lifestyle now.
Mm-hmm.
So.
It's not.
So like working out is a lifestyle. Like how like meatheaded that sounds. That it sounds super meatheaded, but
That's
it
why
is
I
a
laughed
lifestyle.
because I wanted to mock you, but I know it's true. But then it keeps going.
It's a lifestyle, but like within that lifestyle, I have goals. So like you know, like I might always work out, but then like I start training for like a 50-mile ultra, or training for a kettlebell competition, or just train because I want to like build my arms or build my legs or whatever it is.
Right.
So,
But one of the big things I think with you was the fact that you had this certain, so that chip on your shoulder you had, that when you started becoming more and more snarky and but more pushback and a little bit less, you became more gruff. But here's what's funny is that someone could look at that as a negative thing, but that was really the beginning of a certain self-determination that you had of I will not be beaten. I can do this, and you know what? I don't know what lies ahead, but I'm going to find out.
Well, and that was like the basis of a lot of my exercises, a lot of my workouts. I remember like being in the gym and thinking that I couldn't do something, like I couldn't bench this amount of weight or whatever, and then I'd hear that little voice in my mind where Donna would say, "You're not going to make anything of yourself," and then immediately I'd be able to push it up.
I got another rep in me after all.
But the thing is like that works for a certain amount of time, but then you got to like figure out what's next, like what's going to push you, like what is what is going to be the next thing? Because like you can use any situation in life as a way to be motivated if you really want to, but after time it fades.
Right.
So you got to find like what is it that's going to keep me determined? What's going to keep me dedicated to this thing? So, and that's when I started having to like soul search and start training for things, and then that helps build my mind and builds resilience. It makes you a stronger person all around.
Right. Well, and that's kind of why I say it's all the time, like it's a goal, like to a degree. Like yours was working out, and working out because you're having to discipline your body, you're having to discipline your mind, you're having to be focused, and you have to be focused on whatever goal it is at hand. There's a lot of things that are going on during working out because of that dedication you have to it, right? It becomes a lifestyle, it becomes a focus. And
It also is like a good way. It's a good stress reliever.
Right.
So like it helps put the normal, like, can I swear on here?
Go ahead.
It helps put like the normal bullshit things in life into perspective. Like, you know what I mean? Like something bad might happen at work, but if you can go get your workout in, it might change the way you feel about it. Like it might not even matter at that point.
Right. I love how you asked me with that when I literally said what you said to Mom earlier.
Oh yeah, I called her a bitch.
Yeah. So I'm just like, look, this is going to be a very real conversation. We had a similar one with yours. When I was on yours, sorry for our normal Christian listeners, that might bother you, but we already have a whole episode. Is Christian is swearing a sin? Go check it out.
At least we're not smoking cigars and drinking whiskey.
Yeah, that would make us satanic. So I would hate to be that guy.
But like, I kind of want to talk about one other thing too, because I don't talk about this that often. And this is another big defining moment in my life. And this was after I worked at GM. I had a good life. I had my 2 kids. But like I had found out that I had another kid by somebody else. The girl that I was dating when I moved out. She had gotten pregnant, and there was another guy that was in the picture. And so because he was in the picture, she didn't like, I wasn't a part of his life. And so eventually as time went on, I had questions, and her mom ends up doing a DNA test on him. And it came back that he was 99.99% mine. And so at that point, like my wife and I, decided that we were going to hire a lawyer and try to get some sort of rights established. And again, like that was like one of those moments, like when life is going so good, then something else creeps up, and then you got to try to figure out that battle. And you can let it define you, or you can just take it head on and try to make the most of it. Mm-hmm. And so in that moment, like I legitimately thought like I would have a good chance at, being a part of his life. And unfortunately, Michigan law didn't allow that, because there's like statutes where you can't have anything to do with a kid after you have until the kid turns 3 years old to find out whether or not he's yours legally.
But you really didn't know about it.
But I didn't know about it until after I didn't have the test results until after he was 3. Right. So before then, I couldn't get my ex to agree to do the DNA test.
Right. So you're kind of, and that you're really young, so it's not like you even knew the rest of the system to work. So that's horrible, though.
Yeah, I mean, and that was one of those things that, again, that was like a defining moment for a lot of things of like rising above, because like you could let that situation define you. You can let it bother you to the point where like, it could ruin a lot of things in your life if you focus on it. And for me, like, I still think about it every day, literally every single day, but I can't let it define my life, my kid's life, and so on and so forth. So
basically, you just have to hope that one day you'll be able to reconcile something there.
Yeah.
But so that's where, and I think that's where it's so for me, where yours was working out, mine was studying and knowledge.
Are you saying I'm not smart?
No, you are very smart. But actually, yeah, you're kind of dumb. No, just kidding.
I agree.
I agree. But no, it was one of the things for me was like, that was my thing, studying. And because I was always basically, because a lot of the peers I was around, I was always treated like I was the dumb one. I put down a lot, even though, yes, in my academics, I was successful, but in the IFB and everything, and me pushing in the theology realm, I was always put down with my views and always punched down and beat down. And between everything at home and that, I was just like, I am sick and tired of being treated like I'm the dumbest person in the room when I'm pretty sure I'm right. And so that's what for mine. Mine was focus of I want as much knowledge as I possibly can get, and so that became my focus, my goal. It gave me a purpose to get up in the morning. Like similar to what working out can do for you, where it's like I have a focus, I have a goal, and you know what? It's going to take discipline. It takes discipline to get up in the morning and pump weights and kill your body before you go to work or after you go to work. Either way, it takes discipline to pick up a 800-page book and study it to know it. These are different things. And so it is something where it's like this victim. So the victim mentality is a very real thing right now. And what we do is we excuse people. And I think it's a huge problem because what we're doing is we're telling people that it's okay to be a victim. It's okay to be defeated. That's what I hear when I hear that. It's like, well, you don't understand what I've been through.
That's a good point. It's
like,
okay to be defeated.
Yeah, it's okay to be defeated because you know what you went through was horrible. So it's okay to be defeated. You can stay there. Just lay there dead. That's right. And you know what? You have that right to. And I'll be honest, you have that right to, but you shouldn't. Like you have the right to do nothing. You have the right to be wrong, but you shouldn't be.
But in that instance, you can't complain about life.
Right.
I mean, because if you're choosing to just stay in that spot, I mean, there's the only person that can get you out of that spot is you.
Right. And it's not going to be a free handout from people. People have been waiting for forever for free handouts all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not going to be beneficial. It's not going to be helpful for you to do that. So what you need to do is you need to get a plan together, get a focus. And this is why
discipline.
Right.
You
Absolutely.
need discipline.
And this is why I also say meaning and purpose goes a long way. As a Christian, a person and a person who believes that the argument for meaning is a powerful one, because if we are just space accidents, things happen by accident, then there's really no meaning to any of this, right? We live and we die, and it's whatever. But if God is real, then you have a purpose, you have a meaning. You're created in His image. There's a weight there where it's like, okay, well, if your life has meaning to it, and you think it does, which I believe all your lives have meaning. If your life has meaning to it, then breathe life into it. Go do something with it. Okay, yeah, so people were terrible to you for your first 20 years. Dude, you had terrible things happen to you for your first 20 years of life.
Yeah, but you could use that. That's the thing. Like so many people get caught up in like this happened to me, but just imagine like if somebody heard that story. If somebody heard, I mean, so many people, I remember like, and this is one reason why I started the podcast. I remember like working next to people and just telling my story to people. And people were like, wow, that's an incredible story. Like by looking at you, you would never guess that you'd gone through something like that. And so I that's when I started thinking like people hearing my story would be extremely valuable. And so like, I don't know, like it may feel like you're alone in that.
Well, because it's not like
trauma,
people don't tend to walk around and go, look what I've been through. Like, not unless you're really trying to flex all the time, and that'd be weird.
Unless you're a victim.
Yeah, or you're a narcissist who's self-obsessed.
Yeah.
Right. So it is one of those things where that's why I became more open about it. It took me a long time. I'm at Bible college, and everyone would be like, oh, so like, where are you from? And at Bible college, it's like, it's always better. Oh, there's a lot of people. Oh, I'm a preacher's kid. I'm a missionary's kid. Well, I'm not one of those things. My dad works at GM. Oh, really? Your dad's like not in ministry? No, he's not. Like my dad works his butt off every day on the line. And then, are you from a Christian home? And I would always tell people, yeah, I'm from a Christian home. And they go, oh, that's good. Was I? Yeah. But it was in many ways Christian in name only because of how a lot of things behaved in the home. Wasn't really acting out what it was supposed to be. And that's not a dig at Dad. I know he's watching this because I think Dad legitimately was trying to. I remember him reading his Bible. I remember him trying, but then he's a person too, and he's in a terrible situation. Not like he has a wife that was a good support to help his weaknesses either. So you have those things where I'm like, and I remember going through where I was like, well, I need to start being more open about what I've been through, because I started realizing that when people keep some of these things to themselves, all that happens that people do think they're alone, right? Yeah. So you keep it to yourself. Well, now that person who went through it, who is going through it right now, they think they're alone. So I started being very open about it. And I can't tell you, I remember the first few times I opened up about it, I was in college. And I remember like almost taking like a deep breath, and I'm like, well, and it was hard for me. It's hard for me to even admit some of the things that happened to me.
It is hard. It's difficult.
it's
I mean, it's still hard, like, because I don't like to talk about it. Which is funny because that's what I do.
I don't like to talk about it, but I choose to talk about it. What am I? What is life? But it is one of those things where people need. So you have to understand that you have to have a purpose, and you have to have a purpose in life. You have to have a goal, and you have to realize that you can use that. Like you said, you can weaponize it.
Yeah.
You were using, like you said, when you were lifting weights, and you heard, then all of a sudden you hear, like you remember being told you're not going to amount to anything. I remember being told that in ministry I would never amount to anything in ministry. I was told that before because of my mindset, my behavior, my blah blah blah, and I remember going, "Are you kidding me? You don't know what I'm capable of. And man, you haven't even given me a chance yet." And you were probably thinking similar things. Like, you don't even know. I was 9 years old, and you're telling me I'm not going to amount to anything.
Well, that's one thing that like my mindset like flipped, because I used to kind of think where like you're not going to amount to anything. Like, you're going to be a statistic, like everybody said. But then I didn't become one, and I'm like, I can accomplish anything. Like, if I could survive after like I moved out when I was 17 years old, and I'm where I am now, I can accomplish anything. Like, if you tell me I can't do something, I'm gonna be like, I can do it.
Right.
It's not going to affect me
It's almost
one way
like
or the other.
you can't do it. You're like, challenge accepted.
If anything, it's motivation.
Right. And that's what it needs to be. It has to be a certain point of that. And that's a survival mechanism that you need to weaponize. Because if all you do is get beat down, like you said, then you're. And I legitimately think if you let yourself be beat down, you let your abuser win.
Absolutely. And again, like by doing hard things, you learn. By doing the hard things, you learn who you are as a person. You know what you're capable of. You know how far you can push yourself. Like I did 2 years ago in January, I did a 50-mile ultra, and I was actually about to post. I was going to post about it today, but I didn't because it was like a memory from today. But I ran a 50-mile ultra run, and a lot of people are like, why would you do that? Like, why would you?
I mean, that's exactly what I'm thinking right now.
why would you want to put yourself through that? But like, again, like that whole process, I was finding out who I was in that, like training for it and then running for it. The whole time I ran, I didn't listen to headphones at all. I was in the woods just running, and it was just me in my mind. And like, it was just me trying to like push my way through and like digging down deep and trying to figure out who I am as a person. It got to the point where like, it was like late, it was nighttime, it was dark, and I was in the woods with no headlamp or anything, and I had to give up the race because I still had like 14 miles to go or whatever.
50-mile ultra, you only had 14 miles left.
Yeah.
Wow, that's.
But I couldn't do it. It was like unsafe because there's like cliffs and stuff. So I probably could have died.
That just sounds like quitter talk to me.
I quit. But the thing is like, again, like in that moment, I learned something about myself because I quit, but I still ran 37 miles.
Right.
So
you made it well over halfway. Did them pretty good. I wouldn't even get close to that. But
the thing is, like, again, you learn something about yourself, and I know now that if I did it again, I probably could do it.
And now one of the things I wanted to mention, because there was a period of time where I think while you were trying to figure out who you were, and I think Autumn was born at this point. I don't know if Max was, but you even went and got therapy for a minute, right?
Yeah, I think Max was born too.
I was like, I knew it was right around there. Like I knew Max was somewhere in the picture. Couldn't remember if Amanda was pregnant with him or not.
No, I think he was just born.
Okay.
But again, like going through like a lot of the things in our past, it just kind of built up. Like because I had never really talked about it with anybody. Again, this kind of goes into like the whole victim culture because I was starting to become like the very thing that I didn't want to become. With like the way I talk to people and treat people and
resentful,
angry, like just, I mean, working out wasn't cutting it,
too much aggression.
Like you have to, if you need help, you have to go get help. Obviously, like working out helps and like doing other things help, but you have to get professional help if you need it.
But would you say talking about it in those sessions helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and I think that I want to just quickly say something about that's an extremely freeing thing. When I said like I distinctly remember when I first was telling people about my story, and the trauma that I had experienced, how difficult it was. But I remember I felt like a giant weight came off more and more. And that same thing, that anger and that resentment I was carrying around started kind of going away. Because here's the thing, when you keep that inside you the entire time and all you do is think about it and dwell on it and then you hang out on it.
Yeah.
It just, all it does is it controls you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Being open about it actually kind of just drops the weight off of your shoulders.
I just like, for me, it was like a lot of things just happened all at once. And like I had a friend commit suicide, and that was just kind of, I think that right there was like kind of the catalyst that like, I was like, okay, I need to get help, because like just, I don't know, like just too much trauma in my life. It affected me in a negative way, but I realized it. So I wanted to do something about it. So I got therapy. I went to therapy, and it helped. And I didn't do it very long, but like a couple months. And I was fine after that. I would say, I mean, it helped my relationship. I don't know, but
well, I think so. I think you've become a healthier person since. Like I can even say, like as a father and as a husband, I've seen you change and grow. And it's because I said this before, but you got to do what you got to do to get past it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means going to see therapy. That means sometimes it means
you have to be uncomfortable.
Right.
It's not comfortable to go sit in a therapy lobby or a therapist's lobby and know that people are judging you, like, oh, there's something wrong with him. He's here. Like, why is he here?
Right.
And then it's not comfortable sitting across from somebody telling them your most vulnerable things that have ever happened to you, but you have to.
Right. Sometimes, and I think that's one of the key things to breaking out of victim culture. It's easy to be in victim culture. It's easy to just go, wow, these bad things happened to me. Woe is me. Everyone should pay attention to me. Oh, this is terrible. Feel sorry for me.
Yeah.
And then just point your finger at the world constantly. That's easy. That's like the most base instinct. But it's hard. What getting out of victim culture does is it challenges you to not only leave that resent behind that has become your own like comfort blanket, so to speak, but it also means that you got to stop leaving excuses behind, and that you got to start looking at and doing difficult things that you never did before, right? You have to now look at the real world and go, I got to find a way to conquer that. And I can't sit there and pretend that I deserve special treatment, or sit there and you come up with excuses. I have to be open and honest about this, or I have to go work out, or I have to go pursue knowledge, and pursue that degree that I didn't pursue, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know what? I got to stop making excuses for myself and actually just got to do it, because no one else is going to do it for me.
What happened?
Oh no, my camera, it died. Hold on.
So is the live still going?
I think so.
Oh yeah, it is.
Hold on. Rubber raggy.
Oh, we're back.
Hey, we're back. Sorry, the camera overheated. I apologize, everyone. It's been an issue we've been having. So,
but yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. Like, for me, it was like wanting to just, I needed to talk to somebody. And then when I did the podcast for the first time, I mean, the first episode was with Michael, so it was kind of difficult because I'm still trying to like get the feel of the podcast.
You're trying to figure out how to be a host while also doing the show and everything else.
Yeah, and it was very difficult, but we did it. And then the second episode was just me talking. And after I did that episode, like you had mentioned, like it was just like a huge weight off your shoulder. You're like, wow, like I feel so much better. Like I had this angst of wanting to just tell the world like what happened to me, and I finally did it, and it was like, wow, that was relieving.
Right.
And yeah, it's truly amazing.
Because you're taking all those things that happen to you, and you're letting go, you're not letting them have control over you anymore by controlling your speech, by holding you back.
Yeah.
You're just being open about it. You're going, hey, you know what? This is what happened.
Yeah.
It is what happened. And you know what? I can't change it, so I may as well change my future. Like it's letting go of the past in a sense by being open about the past.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I guess I don't know if sure you want to wrap this up soon.
Sure.
Since your equipment's dying. But like that's kind of what the podcast is about. It's about giving other people that opportunity as well to share. Cause I mean, I've had episodes where it's not necessarily that. It's not necessarily about people rising above traumatic experiences. It could be just a business owner talking about his business. Like I released an episode today of a guy who he's a professor at MSU. Seemed like he has a pretty normal life, but he started a pretty big business in Lansing, and came on to promote it. But then I've had other episodes where, you know, people talk about being raped or they talk about all kinds, like being addicted to drugs. And so, you know, it's like, it's just a casual talk show, but but mainly it's about giving people the opportunity to share their stories.
Well, and if nothing else, having people share those stories, it can give courage to people to share their own.
Yeah.
Like hearing that it's going to be okay if you share it. It's
Yeah.
okay to open up about it. And you know what? It's also okay for it to not to control me anymore. And and you have to be careful who your friends are too during those situations. So some of your friends will hold you back.
Yeah.
Because they like it too. They like the victim culture because it gives them excuses to stay away from the difficult things in life.
Yeah.
But what it can really end up, what you need to do is surround yourself with friends who help better you.
There's a quote, a famous quote that says you're as good as the 5 people that you surround yourself with.
That is true. Like there's another famous quote: "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future." And sometimes it means you have to cut out some toxic friends.
Well, I mean, the thing is like once you start bettering your life, you don't have to cut them out. They just fall off.
Right? They fall off, or they get encouraged by your behavior.
Yeah,
and
they become better too.
And they join you, right? And that's one of the things. Like that's why Brian and I are such good friends. You know, you're sitting in his seat right now.
It is comfortable, Brian. I do have to say.
So
I could get used to this.
I mean, we can do another. We can do you and Andrew can do like night talk show here. Then we will get canceled, but. Brian helped better me. I've helped better him. And my buddy Andrew has helped better me. Andrew has like a very steadfast moral compass where, like, if I go in rage mode, because we all like, especially back in my early 20s when I still had my chip on my shoulder and trying to figure out how to process a lot of that. Andrew would be the one if I'm about ready to do something really bad, like go off on somebody.
Dude, calm down, dude.
Yeah, like he's that friend who's like, bro, no, and like, he'll even do it in his Irish accent and everything. I'm not gonna try because I butcher his accent, but he's always just like,
You should butcher it.
he's like, no, we're not gonna do that. See, that's not even it. He's like, we're not gonna. He's like, no, and like he would just say it in this deep, growly voice, no. And it was like, hey, who you think you're talking to? Saying no to me. No one says no to me. And he would like, because this is what's going to happen. You're going to do this and this and this is what's blah, blah, blah. And he just goes on a whole rant of exactly what was going to happen. And then go, so we're not going to do that because we're going to do this and this and this, which can allow you to do X, Y, and Z. That's what you're going to do. And I'm like, gosh, dang it. I hate it that you're right. But you need that friend who was able to hit you in the head a minute. And or follow you or encourage you.
Yeah.
So be careful who you surround yourself with and careful in your mindset. I would say it's normal to some degree to have a moment where you might be angry or sad when something happens.
I mean, you should have emotions.
Right. You shouldn't just cut off. That's not healthy.
I mean, my wife often says I don't have emotions, which I don't. Like, it's very difficult for me to get like emotional about something sad, unless something like happened to my kids or something, my wife maybe even. Like, it would have to be pretty extreme. But like somebody, I don't know. I can't think of a scenario, but like something minor happened. I don't typically get upset about it.
Right. Well, Callie regularly calls me a robot, so she's like,
so you're broken too.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. But I think that's because that's also the defense mechanism that you and I just built in innately. We started learning how to disconnect ourselves from the emotional moment, just look at the moment.
It's a huge disconnect.
Yeah, and which isn't always a bad thing. It can actually make you a very strong person, but you also need to remember it's okay to reattach your emotions, and that took me a while. Callie helped me a lot with that. Being married to her, who's a very feeling person, she challenged me, and she's actually made me like I joke around now that I'm a real human now, like I'm a complete person. One of the defining moments for me was the birth of Eliana, my daughter. That helped me because I remember when I saw her, I was overwhelming joy and pride seeing my kid, and I suddenly realized what it meant to take a bullet for your kid. Like it was all at once. It was almost overwhelming because I don't feel like I don't have strong emotions, and so when I had that, I just remember being like, "What is this?" But now being a father has been one of the best things that's ever happened to me as well, because it's helped reattach and it's like, it's okay to have those feelings. And I think sometimes there's one of two reactions people have when they experience trauma. Either they're way too controlled by their emotions and they're spiraling out of control, or they get so detached, they become horrible, toxic people because they're so detached from it. And it's mainly because they don't want to be vulnerable. They're scared of vulnerability. Every time they're vulnerable, they're hurt. So they'd rather just.
That was my problem. That was my problem.
Ditto.
And, for quite a few years until probably, I would say like maybe 2.5 to 3 years ago.
Very recent.
Yeah.
I'd say I didn't really learn how to fully be vulnerable till Eliana. I was like okay-ish before, but then I experienced some betrayals in the church. Right when it was like that moment where I was like, okay, my cold dead heart's finally waking up, and then somebody like stabbed me in it like 3 times, and I was like, you know what? Never mind. See this? I knew it was a trick. So it is a funny thing that over time but you can. If you have a hard time being vulnerable, it is worth it and it is okay. Relationships are risk. That's it.
Yeah.
Relationships are a risk, period. Just deal with your risk. But they also can be the most rewarding things ever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you get what you put in. So
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, don't be a victim is the whole my thing
yeah,
here.
rise above before it's too late.
Plug for the merch. Shameless plug. But guys, honestly, I hope this was this was kind of just a conversation. Like this wasn't anything. I didn't have even show notes. Like it was just literally you and I are sat upstairs. We have no idea what we're gonna say. We're just gonna
I'd never know what to say.
Just send it.
Just send.
Full send. And I know it was probably kind of scattered, especially in the middle. And I went through the same thing when when we went through our story when I was on your channel telling from my perspective. I was all over the place because there's so many things that happened. It's hard to kind of just keep it focused because everything's attached to another thing. And once you open that Pandora's box, you don't know what's coming out. But then it kind of gets to the point where you go, but honestly, that victim culture thing has got to die and it will kill you. So don't fall into it. You can rise above it. You can be better than it. You don't need to let it split your church. You don't need to let that trauma split your family. You don't need to let it split your heart. Even you can rise above those things, and I think that's an encouraging message. And don't stay dead. You can get up and you can rebuild life no matter what. I had a guy that was emailing me back and forth recently, and he was like, I just think it's too late for me. And I was like, no, dude, how old? He's like, I'm 48 years old. I'm like, dude, if you live till you're 70 or 80, that's like, I mean, you're what, 47, 48? Yeah, good grief, that's 30 years, you could rebuild something.
Yeah, I mean, so many people, again, get caught up in, like it's been a bad year. Like, there's a guy that was on my podcast, and he sent me a message today, and I know that he's been going through some stuff, like with a divorce and some financial problems, and life is really hard for him right now, but it's like life will get better. So he sent me a message today and he was like, hey, I'd like to come back on the podcast to talk about how I don't want to swerve my car into a tree. And then he's like, I'd like to talk about mental health. And he's like, not from the clinical standpoint, but like from the standpoint of like, how I'm contemplating on, not contemplating, but how he's like struggling with the idea of not wanting to swerve his car into a tree.
Right.
So, yeah.
And it's just, and that's the thing. You have to just remind yourself that it can get better, and it will get better.
It always gets better.
Right. Yeah. And you know what? It doesn't mean that all your problems are going to magically go away. Some of those problems stick around, but you kind of get because it might be a health problem that you can't get rid of. Okay, maybe that doesn't get better, but you can make life better for you despite that.
I mean, I hate to keep this going, but like there's so many, if you go through like my episodes on the Rise and Above podcast, there's one guy specifically that I can think of. He's a veteran. He had his arm and his leg blown off in Afghanistan, and there for a while he like succumbed to the depression and everything, became an alcoholic. But then finally one day looked at his kid and was like, why am I doing this? And so then he started changing his life immediately, threw out all the booze, started working out. He was on the cover of Men's Health Fitness magazine, whatever. He was on Ellen, the show Ellen. He was on Dancing with the Stars. Imagine having one leg and one arm and being on Dancing with the Stars. Amazing, truly amazing. Like he managed to change his life around when life seemed like it would be like at its ultimate low.
Right.
And so it always comes back around.
Right. And but that goes into what you put into it.
Exactly.
So I love that. So that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure we promoted here. And it's just so happens I have a pretty fun family, so I'm able to have family members on and have fun conversations. Mainly because it's like all of us have taken different directions and different ways of handling things, and it's really fascinating how it all worked out. But anyway, guys, if you haven't already, go like and subscribe to the Rise and Above podcast. Go buy some merch from the Not Merch store that just happens to share the same name. And guys, honestly, like I said, so David also, like I said, David's podcast is very much more of a casual podcast. It's more secular. So this is theology, philosophy. That's more of a secular podcast. So just so you know, it's going to be it's going to be more raw than here, but it's at the same time, you might benefit from that. I think that there's some people who follow my channel, who came in because of some of the abuse that they experienced, some of the topics we had covered for a while, and they're probably a little bummed that we don't cover these topics much anymore on how to rise above those things and how to be better than those things. But guess what? There is a home for you, and it's with my brother, so it works out. So go check it out. I want to talk about other things. So anyway,
Also, there's the Rising Above community Facebook group, and that's a community of people who are rising above and overcoming. I'm actually going to be doing live videos in that group soon.
That'll be fun.
To talk specifically about like mental health issues and different things, different topical, as opposed to just like general conversational stuff.
That'll be good.
So
all right. Well, guys, if you haven't already, like I said, go to Rising Above with David Hess. Go like and subscribe there. Like and subscribe to the Church Split. Stay tuned. We got some more guests that will be appearing on our podcast, and got more things coming for you. So anyway, with that being said, take care and God bless.